Just hit a button, Morty. Give me a beat.
Oh man, okay, all right,
3.3 plant responses. Let's go ahead and get started. Put on my pointer. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm going to start off my lessons with a study tip just to kind of help you stay on track. So when doing the virtual notebooks, have the teacher notes open in another tab. It is better to make sure that you are 100% correct so that you are using and studying the correct information. So when you're doing a virtual notebook, so for example, for this lesson today, whenever you're doing that virtual notebook, I want you to go and open up my PowerPoint in another tab. And so underneath Unit 3 resources, on this document right here is a bunch of links to including all of my PowerPoint links. Okay, so make sure that you have the teacher notes open so that you are studying and doing the correct information. Okay, another study tip I want to tell people is Control F. So not everyone knows about this, but Control F, if you go on your computer and you press Control F, then it's going to open up a Finders tab. Okay, see this Finders tab right here? So I could say Control, and it highlights it for me. Okay, so that's something that you can use on PowerPoints, on Google Docs, on anything, even PDFs. Okay, so on anything, on any website, you can use Control F on your computer to find that word. Okay, I've also updated your study resources document. Like I said, when I got that information from you guys on like 2 Edpuzzles ago, I think. Okay, so you guys said that you wanted practice quizzes and basically just practice questions with answer keys and additional videos. So I went ahead and uploaded and linked those here. So underneath other people's study resources, there's Quizlets, there's videos that are really good, and most of them are about 2 minutes long. They're not very long. And even some practice quizzes with answer keys. So the next thing that I'm going to do probably today, that you're watching this video, I'm going to record and upload exit ticket solving strategies. So how do you solve these exit tickets and how do you do these problems, okay? So I want to help you guys succeed as much. And I also updated the plant systems resources, so not everything is linked as I'm recording this video, but they will be linked ASAP, no Rocky. Okay, let's just recap some of the information that we've been studying about plants. So right here we have the petals of the flower. Okay, that is a colorful part that attracts pollinators. The carpel, also known as the pistil, is this part right here. That is the stigma, the style, and the ovary. And its job is to produce eggs. Then we have the male part, known as the stamen, the anther at the top, and the filament down below. And its job is to produce pollen. Okay, so the way that flowers reproduce, the way that plants reproduce sexually is by moving pollen from here, from the stamen, here, and letting it go down, reach the egg, and have fertilization occur. Okay, that is how it works. So sometimes plants can fertilize themselves, or pollen can be taken from one flower stamen to another plant's pistil and be fertilized that way. Okay. Let's do some practice questions. So the stomata of leaves are usually open if, okay, so we're talking about the stomata. So these are going to be those holes, those pores on the underside of the leaf that are designed to reduce loss of water. Okay, so the stomata of leaves are going to usually be open in C. The plant is in a rainy climate. So if there's a climate where there's plenty of water, then the stoma can be open because they're not worried about conserving water. But in a desert, in a very dry environment or a very hot environment, the stomata are going to be closed as much as possible to make sure that water does not escape the plant. Look at this picture right here. Which of these labeled structures make up the female part of the plant? So we're talking about the female part of the plant, which we know is, exactly, it's going to be this middle part. The stigma, style, and ovary is the female part of the plant that produces eggs. And that is going to be D, C, B, and A, right? So D, C, B, and A. Okay, another question. So pollen grains are going to be produced by which of these things? Talking about pollen, the male reproductive structures, right? Because pollen is plant sperm, and we know that sperm is produced by male reproductive structures. Okay, let's get into today's lesson, plant responses. So first, what is a plant response? So if we can talk about what a response is, we have to talk about what a stimulus is. So a stimulus is going to be an environmental factor that causes some sort of response. So a bell ringing is going to be a stimulus, right? That's going to be something that's happening in the environment that's going to cause a response. Maybe if the bell rings while you're in class, you're going to get up and go to your next class. If you're out at a store and a bell starts ringing, it's probably going to be a fire alarm. So you're going to evacuate, right? It's going to cause some sort of response. Okay. Well, that response is going to be the reaction to the stimulus. So this is not just in plants, it's not just in animals. This is in all of science. There's stimulus and responses. So a stimulus can also be if someone touches a hot stove. The response is that they're going to pull away from that hot stove, right? Because there's a stimulus. It's too hot. The response is get away from that. It's too hot. Okay. So plants also do the same thing. Plants have responses that could be negative or positive. So plants can either grow towards a stimulus or they can grow away from a stimulus. Okay. And that is this category of plant responses is called a tropism. So I'm going to read the definition. A tropism is a biological phenomenon indicating growth or turning movement of a biological organism, usually a plant, in response to an environmental stimulus. In tropisms, this response is dependent on the direction of the stimulus. Okay, so basically we're talking about how plants begin to grow towards things. Okay, it's a response of a stimulus. So just like in animals, plant responses are going to require interactions of multiple systems, multiple body structures. Okay, so in plants, it's going to be leaves, stems, roots, and flowers, versus in you and I, it's probably your brain and your muscles and your bones and all of that are going to work together. Okay, so there are different types of tropisms. We have geotropism, phototropism, thigmotropism, and hydrotropism. And then another plant response we'll talk about at the very end of lecture today is the nastic movement responses. So one thing about the tropisms is that they all had the word tropism in them. So really the way that you can remember them is by looking at that prefix, that beginning of the word, okay? And some of these you can kind of already tell, like what will hydrotropism have to deal with? What about phototropism or gravitropism? Some of you may already know what those are, okay? There are also these things that are called hormones. So plants and animals both have hormones. And hormones, as we learned in body systems, is that you're chemical messengers. They can either stimulate cells or suppress cells, depending on what that hormone is designed to do. Okay? So they are produced in one location and they cause a response. They travel through the blood in animals, or they travel through the water and sugars in plants. Okay? It's going to cause a response in a different location. So examples of hormones you may or may not have heard of are testosterone, auxin hormone, estrogen, and cortisol. Okay, those are different hormones. Here are some more hormones of plants. So cytokinin, gibberellin, phloragen, and auxin. However, the only plant hormone that you'll need to know is going to be auxin. Okay. The rest of these, if we ask you about them, we're going to tell you what they actually are doing. Okay. So what is auxin hormone? So auxin hormone are these little molecules that stay at the end of a plant, right? And they're going to cause a plant to grow longer. It's going to stimulate growth from the edges of that plant. Okay. Auxin is actually how a lot of these tropisms occur. Auxin goes towards that stimulus and it causes the plant to grow in the direction of that stimulus, okay? So that's exactly what it looks like here. So there's a sun, okay? It's beaming down on that auxin, okay? And as it's beaming down on that auxin is causing these cells to elongate. They're gonna get longer and longer as they move towards the light, okay? So let's actually get into what the tropisms are. So geotropism, gravitropism, they are the exact same thing. It's just two different names for them, but they mean the same thing. Their stimulus, as you maybe have guessed, is going to be gravity. As you can see, gravitropism. Okay, so, but again, it'll also sometimes be called geotropism. They mean the exact same thing. Okay, do not be scared because they say something different. Okay, so something that is going to be negatively geotropic. Well, first things first, think about how gravity works. Gravity is what? Gravity is what keeps you on Earth. It's what pushes down on you to make sure that you stay on the floor. That's gravity. Okay? So we know that gravity is moving in this direction, right? Gravity is moving like that. See that arrow that I'm drawing? It's moving like that. So if something is going to be positive, going in the same direction as gravity, they're going down. Okay? Something that's going to be negatively against gravity is going to go up. Right? That makes sense. Okay, then we have what's called thigmotropism. So this root right here, thigmo means touch, to touch things. So thigmotropic responses are going to be when leaves move towards the sensation of touch. As you can see right here, this plant is growing all around this, I don't know what that is. Okay, the main example of thigmotropism are going to be climbing plants and vines. So if you've ever seen houses or businesses or schools or things that have those vines climbing up them, those vines that are touching the walls, that is thigmo, because thigmo means touch, thigmotropism. Okay, phototropism, very easy, easy, easy. You should know this by now because we know that photo means light, as in taking a photo of someone, or photosynthesis. Like, you guys definitely have to know that photo means light at this point. So if light is coming from a certain direction, the plant is going to go towards that light source. That is called phototropism. Okay, again, here's that infamous hormone auxin. Auxin is in the tips of plants. So as light, you see, as light is moving, the plant is growing more and more towards it. That auxin hormone is causing the cells to elongate in the direction of that stimulus, okay? Hydrotropism, again, another one that is pretty self-explanatory. Hydro means water, right? Hydro, water, okay? So plant roots are going to grow towards water. So let's say this is some sort of experiment, okay? This is a design of an experiment that we typically do in class, if we were in class, but we're not. So I showed a picture of it. So there is a bucket, right? This bucket has a seed. That seed, as we know, is a embryo, so it's going to grow into a plant once it begins to germinate. And there is, right over here, there is this water in a porous pot. So this seed is going to begin to grow towards that water, okay? It would not grow away from the water. It's always going to grow towards that water because plants need water to survive. So they naturally have an instinct to grow towards water. Okay, so just to recap again what these tropisms are. Hydro is water tropism, gravity, gravitropism, photo, light tropism, thigmo, touch tropism. Okay, so you should be able to know like this if you see it in a picture, if I tell you about it, anything like that, you should be able to just know those words. Okay, we have some tropism videos I'm going to show you. Okay. Couple more. Nastic movement. Okay, so now we're done with tropisms. We're going to move on to nastic movement. Nastic movement is a rapid response. So basically, if a response does not involve the growth of a plant, then it cannot be a tropism, right? So this right here is not going to be about growth of a plant. It's just going to be that the plant moves in a direction. So nastic movement is when plants move in response to a stimulus. Again, the difference from tropism is that tropisms are going to affect the growth of a plant depending on direction, while rapid response is just a movement of the plant that is non-directional, okay? So one of them is about growth and has a direction. Another one is just about moving of the plant and is not dependent on the direction of the stimulus, okay? So look right here. So we have the nastic movement example. Okay. So this is a plant that is sensitive to nastic movements. So if you touch that plant, the leaves are going to fold up, as you can see right here, because they touch the fingers. Okay. Why is this not a tropism? It is not a tropism because it does not depend on the direction. So the person touched it and the flower or the plant didn't grow. It just folded itself. Okay. It didn't grow in any way. Okay. This right here, pay attention to this. So a lot of people end up getting this wrong. So we all know what a Venus flytrap is, right? Whenever you put something on that Venus flytrap, it's going to close and trap its prey. A lot of people will think, oh, the fly touches the Venus flytrap. So then if it touches it, then that must be thigmotropism. No, we're not talking about growth. The Venus flytrap is not growing no, all it is doing is it's moving. Okay, so it's not growing. Tropisms are going to be growth responses. Nastic movement is not a growth response. It is just a movement, okay? So just know that Venus flytrap is going to be nastic movement. Why? Why is Venus flytrap closing nastic movement and not a thigmotropism? Okay, let's do a short recap of plants. So This is from my very first lesson, plant structures. So roots soak up blank from the soil. The more blank there is on the roots, the more water can be absorbed. Stems transport water and nutrients around the plant body, while blank transports water and blank transports products of photosynthesis, also known as glucose sugars. Leaves are the site of blank. Leaves also protect against water loss by closing the blank during dry and hot periods. Here's the answers. So roots are going to soak up water from the soil. The more surface area there is on the roots, the more water can be absorbed, while stems are going to transport water and nutrients around the plant body. Xylem transports water, and phloem transports products of photosynthesis. Leaves are the site of photosynthesis. They also protect against water loss by closing stomata during dry and hot periods. Okay, lesson 3.2, plant reproduction recap. Let's go ahead and fill in the blanks. Okay, so flower petals are going to aid in reproduction by attracting pollinators who spread pollen and seeds around the ecosystems. The carpel, which has three parts, the stigma, the style, and the ovary. Okay, that's the female reproductive structure that produces eggs. While the stamen, which is made of the anther and the filament, is the male reproductive structure that produces pollen. Good job. And then from today's lesson, fill in these blanks. Exactly. So trophisms are going to be growth responses that are usually done by the auxin hormone. Nastic movement is a movement response, not a growth response. Okay. Phototropism is going to be growth in response to light, while thigmotropism is growth in response to touch. Gravitropism is growth in response to gravity. Hydrotropism is growth in response to water. So that is pretty much it. Today's virtual notebook is going to be about mostly about plant responses, but about some other things because we have the next time that we see each other is going to be your review and your test. So go ahead and get started on that.